Welcome to Connected Conversations. I'm really grateful that you're here and sharing your time. If you like the conversation that you hear, please like it and share. I'm Emma from Unique Phoenix. I'm a soul coach, energy healer, well-being guide, and an unapologetic, curious soul. Connected Conversations is here to bring love, healing, and connection to our everyday lives through open and authentic conversations. Every single conversation, I'm privileged to interview women and men in our communities that are here being their authentic selves, sharing their unique talents with the world around them. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we can get to know them and what they offer much better.
Hi, I'm Martin Gillespie. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tackling the Silence. Tackling the Silence is a wellness coaching organization that is aiming and working at the correlation on a corporate level, looking at mental health and nutrition. And on a one-on-one basis, we have been working over the last several years exclusively on men's well-being, bridging the gap that men need growth, empathy, and self-image.
Welcome to Connected Conversations, to bring healing, love, connection to our everyday lives through authentic and open conversations. And with me today is the brilliant Martin Gillespie. He is a wellness warrior for men with an absolutely crazy vast business background that includes experience and qualifications in mental health, nutrition, environmental science, marketing, business wellness, and well-being, which is so needed right now. He is the founder and CEO of Tackling the Silence, which focuses on organizational health. And again, it's incredibly needed right now, considering that, the space that we're moving away from. Thank you so much for being here today. I really am honoured to share time with you, and I'm excited about delving into the conversation and going into my curiosity, which is a big part of the podcast. Thank you and welcome.
Oh, look, thanks, Emma. And the one thing that you did miss out is that I am Scottish. So thanks to the beautiful technology, we can translate from Scottishism to Australianism and beyond.
Well, that's a bit boring. But anyway, I like all the little isms out there and the diversity that comes with it. And sometimes trying to translate what people are actually talking about when they say things. So if it happens, I'll always ask anyway. I want to know first and foremost about your background. Like, how did you, because you have got such a vast background, how did that sort of, how did it roll through to where you are now?
So it kind of rolled through from a very programmed mentality, if that made sense.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in Scotland, went to school, went to university. Funnily, all my family background is in accounting. And I'm one of 5 children. I thought I was one of 5 children, so we'll come back to that at a later point. But I was one of 5 kids. And all my family, all the siblings became accountants, apart from my younger sister. She became a nurse. So they're all kind of business background. And I was the middle child. So maybe that explains quite a lot. And I decided to study hotel management and nutrition because when I was about 13, 14, I loved cooking. And when you're part of a big family, you've got to feed people. Mm. So I was the cook at home. I'd be cooking Christmas dinner and New Year and celebrations and basically everyday meals as well. So I decided to study that. And one of the motivational factors that I was attracted to was I studied in a place called Aberdeen, which is in the northern part of Scotland, okay, which as a student is one of the best places to be. It is cold, really cold.
I don't know if that's a selling point for me. I'm just saying.
It is beautiful. And I was really interested in what do you feed people out on the oil rigs? It's a bit like living in Perth. What do you feed people in remote areas
Yeah.
where you cannot drink alcohol and you're not allowed to smoke? So food becomes a central point of your being.
Mm.
And literally, you break bread together. That becomes the community and the connection that you have and a value of that day. So I was really interested in doing that. But you're talking of the late 80s, early 90s, and my career path was destined to be something else. But also at that stage, unless you were a functional medical scientist, there was very little room for disruptive thinking.
What do you mean?
Well, unless you were having a science background, you couldn't really bridge that gap to go, well, wait a minute, you're a human being. Here's what else food gives you. Food gives you energy, and how you pursue that and how your productivity is. The mindset at that stage was eat carbohydrates, eat this, eat that. Here's a programmed pyramid of eating, therefore you'll be healthy.
Yeah.
And marketing was just beginning to get legs. And I have to say, I was just a little bit about the marketing side of it as well, because that's when the energy really around marketing was huge. I studied my first degrees in hotel management with nutrition. I've got a master's degree in international marketing that I decided to do after that, because I really wanted to get into how do you translate not just language, but energy and messages over globally.
Mm.
And I was fortunate enough when I left with my master's degree, believe it or not, the first job I had was a sales and marketing manager for Budweiser beer in Scotland, promoting beer to Scottish people.
That's a hard job, I imagine.
Look, the hardest bit was actually, and fun part aside, simple little things. In the UK, you can buy alcohol when you do your food shopping. So my mates would walk in front of me, and I had an expense account that if I saw them buying beer that wasn't the beer that I worked for, I could go up and say, I work for this beer, let me buy you beers. So all my mates used to follow me around the supermarkets because they all got free beer. And then you would work with your other mates that you got to know in the industry that would be selling spirits. So you would be bootlegging in the back of your car a case of beer for 2 bottles of whiskey, kind of stuff. It was great. It was I was going to say it was a fluid economy, but it was fun. You're in your 20s, you're having fun. And then, believe it or not, I mentioned there about my family being involved in accounting. I'd been working for Budweiser, and I was in there for a couple of years. I'm going, time to move on, time to use my brain. And I actually went to a recruitment organization, said, look, this is what I'm looking for. And within 6 weeks, I ended up working for them in accounting. They needed someone who had the skills that I had to run a part of their business that was floundering. And for me, I'm going, well, I've got some knowledge on accounting. I know the terminology. I'll need some learning. I'll need to grow a little bit. But lo and behold, it was brilliant. And the dynamics of being commercially thinking, as opposed to an accountant thinks black and white, sometimes can't see the gray. I'm always looking at the optimistic view on life. Mm. And I managed to turn that around. And that's how I ended up in Australia. I was working for a recruitment business that their biggest client was National Australia Bank. So I had the opportunity to either move to Melbourne or move to Sydney. And the thing that attracted me to Sydney was that it was new. I'd never been to it. It had an energy about it that reminded me of what New York must have been like in the 50s and 60s. That if you're prepared to get off your backside, you can actually do pretty well. And that's where I came here, year 2000, just before the Olympics. Didn't know anybody. At least I had a job.
Yeah.
And my original plan was to come out for a couple of years and see what it was like. And obviously I'm still here.
22 years later.
20 odd years later, and how my path had changed.
Oh, absolutely. And you can see that. I do want to ask a specific question because I want to get into the men's health side of things. Um, but before we do, I want to ask about environmental medicine. I was going to do some research around. I thought, do you know what? I'm going to ask you because I have a real curiosity about what that is.
So environmental medicine is really looking at what you would call endocrine disruptors. So, for example, a beautiful global sport that was created in Scotland, the home of golf. How many people do we know that play golf? Probably quite a lot. How many of your listeners will play golf, right? I think it's one of the most stupid games on the planet, but that's my own personal belief. One of the things that people have to take in mind when you play golf and you think in one brain that I'm being healthy because I'm doing a sport, I'm hitting a little ball and I'm walking X amount and I'm out there in fresh air. If you take the greens of a golf, i.e. where the ball will flow well, that's generally sprayed with a lot of pesticides, which are toxic. So as you're walking on that green for 2 or 3 hours, your skin is absorbing all these disruptors into your skin, which is your biggest organ.
Yeah.
So that's one area of environmental. The other one, which I think that people can take as a home benefit that they can change, is looking at the washing powders they utilize to wash their clothes in.
Oh, that's a great little thing for me to say right now. It wasn't even meant to happen. I actually have made my own for years, and I'm just starting to make it and sell it to people. And it's environmentally friendly. It biodegrades. It's all based on, basic natural products. And it is the best washing powder I've ever used. And I've given it to friends over the years, and they've always come back and said, "Oh my God, like I want more of that." So yeah, that's
I'll
be putting that out there.
that plus the one thing in Australia, when you look at environmental, is take a walk into any pharmacist shop. And now as if you look at vitamin D in Australia, you look at putting sunblock on. Most of the products are full of toxins. But people don't understand this, and your skin is your biggest organ. So in the environment, your simple little things like, people are mostly aware of the technology aspect about blue lights and the telephone being in the bedroom and all that kind of stuff. But you've got to look beyond that. And there's an awful lot of work looking at the mold in your household, the water that you drink in Australia. People's perception is that the water they drink is pure. I will suggest that as a test, pour a glass of water into a glass and leave it on your kitchen bench for 3 days, uncovered, then look at it and consider what that will do to your body. So it's simple little things like that you look at and go, I didn't realize that. And people drinking out of plastic bottles, or even, as you rightly said, you make your own washing powder. People will pick up things and they'll say, no toxins in this, but it's in a plastic container. So you've got to look at that balance, and environmentally, you're inhaling a lot of things that's going to have an impact on your health. And we don't talk about these things, air conditioning, lighting, all of those things have an impact on our psychological health.
Even things like candles and air fresheners. And, I've been saying it for years, and a lot of the people around me have always thought that I've had two heads, but I sort of say we're porous. So what you put onto your body goes into your body. So, you've got to read labels, have a think about what you're putting on your skin and how you wash your hair. Because we're not, most people cannot afford the systems that take out the toxins that is in our water and clean it up to wash and, bathe and to drink it, because they are enormously expensive. But, just simple things like you've got control over the rest of it. That may not be, but you're not going to spend hours in the shower. So, but I love that. I've been doing environmental medicine for years then, Martin.
And the other one, which is so cheap as well. And again, it's a great connection that you can have with your family. And it's something that we work with the coaching clients that we have. The benefits of a cold shower.
Yes.
And also, bringing back my Scottishism, it doesn't cost you any money because it's cold water.
Yeah.
Having a cold shower, one of the things that we suggest to people and connecting with their families is having a chart on the fridge on 1 or 2 days a week that your whole family has that cold shower. You write down how you feel. Therefore, you're engaging with, if it's teenagers, you're engaging with them. They're looking forward to it. You're creating an energy, creating an energy of well-being.
I end on a cold shower. I can't do the whole cold shower just yet. I know. I'm getting there.
I'm a big fan of
my youngest already does it. She comes out and she goes, "Oh, I had a cold shower today, Mum. Maybe not to, because she just does it because she wants to play around and try things, and she knows that she's seen me do it. So off she goes and has a cold shower." How do you get teenagers to do it though? I'm interested.
It's about they will egg each other on a little bit, and you go into their mentality, right? So if you say to them on a Tuesday morning, that's the day that you're going to be doing it, you remind them as they're going to bed, that's what they're doing. So subconsciously, they always want to be, they're very competitive, and they always want to be the first to do something. Or, younger children, even 8, 9-year-olds, I was in it for 10 minutes. And you know that that's not true, but you allowed them to feel good about themselves.
Whilst you let the other siblings have a crack at them for lying about it. But
that doesn't matter. You can cause World War III between all your kids. You don't care. You've all got back to the focus is that you've all done it. So it's as simple that, again, those things create fun, connection. Culture is not everybody's cup of tea, but you know what? It can take 3 minutes and it's fine. And the well-being, and you can repeat, and it's fun.
I love that, because then you can get everyone involved, and then they can see their mum squirm a little bit, because I'll be a baby about it, but that's okay. I'm happy being a bit of a baby about it.
That's all right.
I really do, and I guess what I'm taking out of your journey with business and in life, you've really intuitively followed your path. Was that something that it was in your awareness that you were doing, or you just can you look back and reflect and go, wow, I was really listening intuitively to my soul telling me which way to go?
Yeah, I think so. I think subconsciously I was always in I was going to say a leadership role, and I mean it with a small L, if that makes sense.
Yep.
That I was always leading by example. And yeah, look, I'm not going to say that I'm Snow White. Yes, I've had nights when I've drank too much alcohol, woke up the next day with a massive hangover, lived my life kind of stuff in that sense. We've all done that, right? I woke up one morning with no eyebrows because I shaved them off. I was on holiday one year in the Spanish islands, and I had no money, and I was there with my younger sister and 2 other girls, and they were all getting the makeup on and getting groomed to go out, and I said, "Oh, look, I can't really go out, it's the last night, I've got no money left." And it was a bit of a bet. I ended up for almost $10 shaving my eyebrows off, and I hadn't realized what your eyebrows are useful for. So I'm in a nightclub, I'm drinking.
They're like your expression centers.
But the sweat runs into them, and you don't have any window wipers to wash off your eyes.
But at least they grow back at particular, because you were young, at least you have the ability to grow them back. Don't do that when you're older, because they may not grow back. But eyelashes, I found out, you burn those suckers off or cut them off, they don't grow back.
But I recall being in a nightclub, I was actually chatting to a pole, and I thought it was someone I was chatting to, because every time I would move my head, I wouldn't see some things clearly. So, I look back at some of the things that I've done, and I've always, I mentioned earlier there that being one of 5 kids and making sure that everybody had a meal on the table, I was always that kind of leader or fix-it person in my family, subconsciously, and I didn't really realize that I was doing that. And when I remember at high school for a couple of years, I would be organizing charity events. I even managed to persuade one of the teachers to raffle his beard that he had for 25 years as a prize, and the winning prize would be to shave his beard off. So we're raising money for charity and doing some really crazy things, if that makes sense. And here we are, we're 16-year-olds, we're singing Christmas carols dressed as Santa, and we were skinny Santas rather than big fat Santas, because we're 16, we're boys and girls with no lumps and bumps, if that makes sense. We're not big and fat. And it was a bit of fun. And I think we had one tune that we could play, and we're just harassing people for charity money. So I look back on that and go, right, I was always destined to do something. But fast forward, 2000, I came here, I met someone, got married, and then had children. And I was on that white picket fence mentality of the corporate bandwagon.
Mm-hmm.
And very high powered job, a lot of responsibility, but also a lot of stress.
Mm-hmm.
And with rewards comes stress. And, I had 2 kids under the age of 3, married, been with someone for, at that point, about 10 years. And I thought that was it. I'm 41, big mortgage, and really not knowing who I was, if that makes sense. Dare I say, I would sold myself to the corporate because, I lived in Sydney. You're on that bandwagon of a good salary. Your education is up here. You think you're on this trajectory. You can't really see anything beyond that because you become seduced by it.
Yeah.
And then the wheels came off in they came off in 2010. My youngest was 6 months old, and my mum died suddenly at the age of 68 in Scotland. So that was a bit of a shock. She'd just been to Australia 6 weeks prior with my father, and she'd aged quite a bit. She had Alzheimer's, heart disease. She obviously didn't look after herself that well. And knowing what I know now, I wish I could have done some things then, but I was over here, she was over there. So she died in April 2010. And then in a year later, we found out that my father, who'd been married to my mother for 43 years, actually had a mistress, and I actually have another brother in Scotland.
Wow.
He had a mistress for 38 years.
Wow. Well, your mum could have looked after her as much as she wanted to, but she
So
had emotional challenges.
we spoke prior that instinctively, I think my mother knew.
Oh, yeah.
But you're looking at it a different generation. You're looking at it from your lens as well. And what would you do if you were in your late 50s, say for age-wise, that you don't know what you don't know, and all those kind of stuff, and societal judgment, etc. So we believe that my mother knew. But then we found out that was in 2011. And then in 2012, April 2012, my young sis at the age of 37 fought a fantastic battle with breast cancer, but passed away after a 5-year battle with breast cancer. And then 6 weeks after that, my father was on a wall around his house, sort of 1.8 meters, about my height, around his house, chopping overhanging branches, and he slipped off the wall. And he had a pair of secateurs in his top pocket, and as he fell, garden secateurs pierced him in the heart, and he bled to death.
Wow.
And then 6 months after that, in the September of 2012, my 6-year marriage eventually broke down. And then 6 weeks after that, in November 2012, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer.
That's a big 12 months. It's a big 2 years.
One of those squeezy boxes, accordion musical boxes? It was like that. So I was fighting battles, if that makes sense, in so many areas. Trying to save a marriage, trying to save a job, and being diagnosed with stage 4 cancer means, for those who are unaware, there is no stage 5.
Yeah.
So staging of cancer is very complicated depending on the type of cancer. But the cancer I had was a blood cancer, and it goes 1 to 4. 1 has got a certain protocol, 4 has got a certain protocol. To put it in a nutshell, stage 4 meant that it was all over my body and in vital organs.
Wow. Yeah.
So I'm blessed with the fact that medical advancements are such that they are now, that 20 or 30 years ago, I'd probably be dead.
Yeah.
So I embrace the new thinking of medicine, as well as the complementary medicine that we need to know about. And you've got to have a balance, I think.
I it would change the face of our healthcare system if we had scientifically based modalities included in our Medicare system, like kinesiology, bone therapy, like chiropractic, but going back to origins of chiropractic, not the cracking stuff, and naturopathy, herbology in there, Chinese medicine.
Like
and they're all science based, and there's a multitude of proof out there, but having it all included, it would change the face of human health across the world if everyone if governments adopted that approach and said, here we go, we're going to include everything because we know it all works, and you get to have a choice in the healthcare that's provided to you.
I couldn't agree more with you, Emma. And one of the key things, when I remember being diagnosed with cancer, and the first thing I did was break down in tears. Right?
Yeah.
And I can't really recall what happened for the next few minutes. But I remember my hematologist saying to me, we'll book you in to see a counselor tomorrow before you start your treatment. And I had this, I'm a man, I don't need any help, but I was broken. I was broken in so many areas of my life. I needed to receive help, but I'd never learned how to receive help. I'd learned how over the years in corporate, you ask for help, you get people to help you with a project, you get people to help you with superficial things that are external. I'd never asked for help in a personal point of view.
Internal help is a very different space of asking for help. That is the most vulnerable receiving of help that you'll ever experience in your life. And
it took me a while to feel comfortable being uncomfortable. And I remember going to see the first of many psychologists I went to see, and this woman said to me, welcome to new beginnings. And that was a trigger for me, going, I need to think differently. And I spent many months up and down, and my marriage had broken up, and it was quite an acrimonious divorce as well. So there was that battle going on. There was a battle to stay healthy. And I'll be honest, being of my background, my genetic background, I was spending too much money, energy, and time making love to bottle shops.
Yeah, nearly said there must be something about it. I went from being sober, not drinking much for 10 years, to drinking for about a year after I first separated. I was like, I'm going out and partying.
I would kid myself on to try and be healthy, go for a walk with $20 in my pocket so I could buy at least 2 bottles of wine on the way back. And every walk had a bottle shop. So I knew exactly, I only had to carry them 200 meters to where I was living. I got to the stage where I knew that I had to stop when I started looking at the casks or the boxes of wine at single figures, going, I need to stop. I need to stop. So I've not drank alcohol in almost 2 years now. Actually, I tell a lie. One night last year, I became an international best-selling author last year. And with my colleagues, we co-wrote a book, and it went #1 in Europe in 8 different countries, over 30 different categories.
What's the book name?
The book is called The Power of Reinvention.
Okay, beautiful.
And I was the only male that actually contributed to it. There was 9 of us, 8 females, and the link was that 3 of us actually went to the same university at one point, but we didn't know each other. So we have Dutch people, Finnish people, American, French, obviously myself, that's a confused Scottish Australian, and writing from the heart. Now we touch really topical subjects like this conversation. We touch things like divorcing from parents. We touch things about repeating the same pattern of relationships, because it's what you're familiar with, but you think you can fix something, both from a male and female point of view. And I wrote about my cancer journey and the white picket fence of what I thought was reality to what actually was in my soul. So when I got ill, I realized there was some triggers in me going back to basics. And I went through 4.5 months of intense chemotherapy. And I jokingly say that chemotherapy gave me 2 things: a Scottish accent and a crap sense of humor. But But I do believe that they might have been there in the first place.
I think the sense of humor hasn't faltered, actually.
So one of the side effects, and again, combining drinking too much alcohol and chemotherapy is a no-go, absolute no-go. But I had a thing called peripheral neuropathy, and that essentially is I had no feelings in my fingers, no like pins and needles. But I had no feelings. I could not hold a pen. I could not tie shoelaces. And what I found really frustrating, my kids were 4 and 6, 4 and 7. I couldn't play Lego with them because my motor skills weren't there to hold the little bits of Lego together. I couldn't play board games. I couldn't do jigsaws. So the frustrational aspects were huge in me. And one thing I started doing, I started eating, I went to see nutritionists, and they put me on what is known as the standard Australian diet. They didn't care what treatment I was getting. They had a mindset, eat this, eat this, eat this, and you'll be better.
I hear more and more about this. The more cancer
So
patients I meet.
one of the treatments in cancer is that a lot of the treatments you're on steroids, and steroids have an imbalance in your body and your gut microbiome that will make you want to always eat. So I would be eating cooked chicken, which is a quintessential Australian, going for a barbecue, let's grab a cooked chicken. I ate cooked chicken for about 2 years because I needed a protein. But I was also so obsessed about trying to get 9 or 10 vegetables in me every day. And I started putting on a lot of weight. So I was looking at the side effects on my lifestyle. My sleep had gone out the window. Yes, hands up, I was drinking too much alcohol. But I wasn't wanting to let that go because that was an anchor. And societal aspect, have a drink, Martin, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Right. And even actually to this day, my hematologist, whom I keep annoying by being so healthy, he said to me, if you are going to drink the night before chemotherapy, have some Pinot Noir because it's got more antioxidants in it than any other type of red wine.
Do you know that was my favorite red wine? I don't drink anymore. I haven't for 18 months. And Pinot Noir was my favorite. And because of that reason, I found out that it was healthy for you many, many years ago. I heard it was from a wine person. Well, not healthy, but it had a great amount of antioxidants. I thought, if I'm going to drink, I'm going to bring on this.
So I tried to put my wine bill through as a medical expense in my tax return, but my accountant told me, I think in Anglo-Saxon, to go away. So I realized that things in my control were out of control. And I was also working at the time because I needed work as an anchor, and work, I have to say, the company I was with at the time were very, very supportive. I would come in at the crack of dawn. This was before working from home and all that kind of stuff. I'd come in really early and then mid-afternoon go, I need to go and I need to be working from home because I was tired. And we spoke earlier, you've got 3 kids, I've got 2. And for those who have got children will remember that, especially in those very early ages, if a child doesn't get that afternoon sleep, that night, they're terrible. So I was childlike in that sense because my sleep was all over the place.
Well, your body was unwell.
My body was completely unwell. And I also, it's funny that, we mentioned it earlier about complementary medicines. I was so open. I was seeing counselors for relationships, for different types of treatments, if that makes sense. And then you can have too much of it. I remember going to see one, and it was the 3rd one that week. And I said, I can't do any more of this. I'm done. And I never had, and I'll be very open here, I never ever had any suicidal thoughts. That's something that people, with cancer treatment, that's very prevalent. I never had them, but I did have high anxiety bordering on depressional thoughts.
Of course. That's not surprising at all. Yeah.
But I didn't want to admit it because too much self-pride. And my self-image of my own self was, I'm impervious, but I'm getting this help. And then I'm still caught in this corporate vortex as well. But on the side, I started reaching out, and that's when I got involved in studying nutritional environmental medicine, because I knew that I could do things that I could control, but I needed to learn a little bit more about it and how it impacted me. And the beautiful thing was that I wanted to do it from a medical point of view, a functional medical point of view, because I was spending a lot of time with medical people, but not one of them spoke to me about what your sleep is, what your environment is like, and what are you eating.
Yeah. You go in for a mental health plan with most GPs, and they will ask you the very basic questions, but they're not asking about what your diet is. They're not asking about how much activity you do during the day, getting sunshine, how much water are you drinking. They're not asking those aspects of life. They're just putting you.
So it's funny you say that, because a very simple blood test that you can get is testing your selenium amount. And selenium is a direct correlation to the amount of sleep that you will get. And also, if you're looking at your kidney results from a blood test, we'll be able to tell you if your kidneys are working while you're sleeping. So
yeah, I get a blood test every couple of years. For that reason, my naturopath makes me.
like what one of the tidbits, if that makes sense, and I'll jump to some of the stuff that we do coaching wise. There is let me ask you, Emma, tell me a date that comes to your mind about your being.
In what way?
Okay, so if I said to you, what's your date of birth?
Oh yeah, in May. Yep.
Yeah, mate, you'll know the exact day in May. One thing that we recommend people to do is take that day, no matter what age you are, take that day and get a full medical.
Mine's a summer spring thing, I've got to say. Like, it's almost like I call it like a Christmas present to myself. My doctor knows every couple of years I'll go in either December or January, and I'll be like, right, let's test it up, lady. Like, let's get
Test
this
it up,
sorted.
get it
Go
tested.
see my naturopath, and off we go.
It's funny. We spend, as human beings, and especially as men here, I'll be a bit sexist here.
Yeah, I want to get into that.
Men will look, if someone damages their car, it'll be in the car mechanic the next day. But if they have a lump or bump, firstly, they don't know how to look after themselves. They don't know how to touch themselves, not from a sexual point of view,
No.
but to touch themselves energetically and physically, to test their body, because their body will tell them what is happening in their being. And every single day, you are the CEO of almost 40 trillion cells in your body. Don't abuse them.
I'm all about the nourishment here. I do want to get onto men's health.
Yep.
Because you said something before, reward equals stress. So, it's no different when it comes to, I know that we're going to talk about men's health, but I do want to say, even with women, you have to get, a lot of people that will come and see me, and I'm sure come and see you, they're at the end. They don't have an answer anymore. They don't know. They're like, I don't know what to do anymore. I can't go and do a 2-week program and fix everything, or, I can't click my fingers and make it all go away. So there definitely needs to be a thinking change. Obviously, there needs to be an emotional intelligence, feeling change as well. But how much impact does that have on men's health?
Absolutely huge. So if you take it, there's a lot of men, and there is a mindset that men value materialistic wealth. And if, for example, in the corporate world, a lot of men if you take it from sort of mid-30s age-wise, start putting on visceral fat, start putting on the beer belly. And a lot of men still have this mentality that the fatter they are, the healthier and wealthier they are, because they can afford what in their mind is good food, i.e. lots of alcohol. So one of the key messages is tapping into the emotional well-being and emotional language. So one of the tools we use is the vanity of being a hottie. Healthy on the inside.
I love it.
So if you're healthy on the inside, you're protecting your organs.
Mm.
You love your liver. Therefore, when you're drinking alcohol, and look, my aspect about alcohol does have some medicinal purposes, right? I will make no claims about that. And I know lots of people who like in the Scottish phrase, they like a wee dram at night time, right? You know what? There is probably nothing wrong with that. It's when it becomes an anchor, when it becomes habitual, when it becomes one glass becomes two. And it's very, very easy for men in particular, and women, actually, but I was going to say men. You'll start dinner, you'll pour a glass of wine. You'll be making dinner, you'll sip another one. You'll sit down and have another one. And lo and behold, if you're with company, you're on your second bottle of wine by then. And there is that mindset, oh, we'll just finish the bottle. You do that 3-4 nights a week. That's going to have a massive impact. Now, you go to sleep, your liver, kidneys, pancreas, 3 of your key organs are still working overtime. You'll get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. You'll wake up the next day with this thirst, and you'll fill it with things like the quintessential toast and Vegemite, which essentially is 4 layers or 5 spoonfuls of sugar on top of the sugar that's still in your body.
Oh, and yeast. Excellent.
Yeast, right? So I beyond belief, but one of the key things with men in particular is that we never learn these things about self-image because it's programmed from a very young age. Don't cry in the playground. Crying is a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
I remember playing soccer and someone broke the leg. It was an accident. The scream of this young man was huge. But you can see things when people break the bones, you can see them physically. But when you're dealing with emotional things such as cancer, depression, anxiety, that takes years and years for that to come to the forefront.
Yeah.
And people wear the mask of masculinity an awful lot. But when you break that down, and one of the things about with men and the work that we're doing with men is also the connection they have, not just with themselves, they need that connection with other men, which is really important. In the last couple of years, the psychological safety of men just being able to talk is actually something that's missing in their well-being.
Yes. I mean, in the last couple of years, I've probably highlighted that, even more so, and particularly being from Melbourne as well, because we've not had access to connect. But that's quite a common aspect of, that's missing from men's health, is the fact that just being open and talking and having those deeper conversations with other males around them. Because I don't know about you, but how many men would you know that don't have a huge circle of friends, that may only have acquaintances more than friends, because they don't actually know how to form relationships? So what effect does that have?
Well, it's funny you say that, because one of the things that in a couple of weeks' time, I'm actually facilitating a men's group, if you want to call it that. It's actually through the local RSL, and it's actually returned servicemen who've been labelled to having PTSD. Now, if you give a label to something, you're giving it energy.
Oh, yeah.
You and I, you have the name Emma, I have the name Martin. That was given to us. We've grown into that identity, right? Giving something a label, and this is where I go back to the cancer that I had. I had a checkup yesterday with my hematologist, and he keeps saying to me, what the hell are you doing? Because you look so healthy. And he's checking all my bloods, and I get a full medical every 3-4 months, right? So years ago, my anxiety levels were still up there. Now I go, great, I'm getting a checkup. And even yesterday he said, you've lost weight. I said, well, yeah, I'm sort of moving things around, doing some more weights, and I'm focused on one of the most amazing things that you can do. And he said, what's that? I said, sleep. So I say to my mates, a bit of self-care, here's a little bit of my vulnerability. I've got a couple of mates where every couple of days we check in with each other, and first conversation, how much sleep are you having? So we use sleep as a priority, as our well-being. Now, when you're talking to men and talking to women as well, and you value something that is so important, sleep is free, but we've been measured and programmed with movies and with the 80s, 90s, sleep when you're dead. No, sleep when you need it.
Oh, yeah. And you know, this 8 hours business, I mean, everyone runs differently. I know people that run off 3 or 4 hours very successfully. I run off about 6 normally. 5 is good. 7 is any more than 7, and I get tired. But you know, you got to get to know what your best sleep is, don't you? Because your body reacts so well to it. But I love that you guys are checking in with each other.
We've got
Regardless of
to.
what the check-in is about. I mean, your priority is sleep, and it's fantastic that you're talking about those things, but the fact that you are actually checking in on each other.
Oh, we've got to, and a bit of banter type of stuff. And I'm looking forward to doing some of these, because I ran a men's circle, and I was actually awarded a global prize on this as one of the most forward-thinking medical health practitioners. I ran a men's circle in the local neighborhood where I live.
Perfect.
And it was for a 12-week program. And over that 12 weeks, I had 35 men come to it.
Mm.
And we covered, I would bring a topic, let it flow, and then I put them into breathing exercises. Now, you and I probably know that as meditation, and the power of meditation is huge. You tell someone to meditate, you're given direction. You invite them to breathe with their eyes closed. You're allowing them to sink into it. And the men were coming back for that. Now, we covered things like, I remember one example where I had 5 men in front of me, and they all had boys, and I've got 2 daughters. And we spoke about real issues around, what would you do if your sons or my daughters were the victim of or accused of molestation? You never have these conversations. So the psychological safety was there for people to talk about these things. And from that, a lot of the work that we are doing are people who I'm working with 2 men at the moment who were raped in teenage years by religious orders, and now they're in their 50s and 60s. I'm working with psychologists who have been on painkillers for 15 years.
Yeah.
I'm working with some cancer patients as well. But more importantly, we're working in the corporate space as well with people who are, I was going to say, a little bit awake, a little bit aware of who they are, but are open enough to look at doing more work, and the answers are all within. But they need that little tweaking. And if you look at it, if you take someone who's, say, the age of 45, for 45 years, they've been eating processed foods.
Yeah.
So this is not a quick fix. When you try to change your brain chemistry, you have to change your gut chemistry. You change your gut chemistry, the flow between your gut, your blood, and your brain. And what's the biggest organ between your gut and your brain? Your heart. To activate your heart, you have to have a clear line of sight.
Yeah.
And if you're filling that with the cheeky pizzas, the cheeky beers, guess what? You're not going to be living your best healthy life.
So if you, were saying to men, just who are listening, and what are some of the most important aspects for them to give focus to first? Because obviously there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can give focus to, but if you're at the beginning of this journey, what would be some of the most?
So some of the most important things, I think step 1, go and find a good, healthy medical practitioner that can do some good blood tests with you. A blood test are a biomarker of your being. Now, your blood test is not everything, but a blood test will be able to give you a line in the sand and look for certain things, like get a mineral test to find out your mineral toxic load in your gut. That'll cover your copper, zinc, iron, for example. And zinc, for example, is the most important mineral men need to protect their prostate gland.
Mm-hmm.
Zinc is found biodegradable and in the nutritional aspect through animal protein. So if you're not eating animal protein, your zinc level is going to be lower.
Yeah.
Right? If you're drinking a lot of alcohol, it's also going to lower these minerals.
Mm.
So but the other key thing is when you go and see a doctor, if you walk in and your doctor is not walking the walk themselves, get another doctor. If they're not looking after their self-care, which over 60% of medics have a self-care challenge. So you might have to do a little bit of playing around, but go and get a blood test. And if you are in a relationship with someone, tell that person that's what you're doing. Because being vulnerable with that other person will reinforce that vulnerability with yourself and keep yourself accountable.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I
So
like
embrace that vulnerability. Also say to your mates, that's what you're doing, to encourage a mate to come along. To borrow that Australian vernacular, engage with your mates. Talk to them about your health and that you're doing something, because you will have that ripple effect. And the third thing that I would say is for men in particular, when you're in the shower, a little tip, get some shower gel on your 2 fingers and check under your armpits and around your groin for any lumps or bumps. Your lymph nodes are the bits around your neck, under your armpit, and in your groin. If they're inflamed, tell your doctor. Your lymph nodes are essentially the bit that flows the blood through your body. And if they are inflamed, like a child with swollen glands, if they're inflamed, there's inflammation in your body. So you're approaching things at an early stage. Don't leave it too late.
I love that. And I love that not only have you said find a good doctor, but also find one that is walking their talk. You know, like if they're going to promote mental health and put you onto things and talk about health with you, then absolutely they need to be walking that talk. You know, otherwise, let's face it, and I'm not shy about saying it, they're a drug dealer. Really, that's all they are. They're not actually doing any kind of doctoring if they're not got well-being in their life, and they're shelling out prescriptions to you. That's not a medical GP.
They are disease managers.
Thank you. I call them drug dealers. I'm a bit more harsh about it.
Well, it's
the bogan coming out of me.
in Australia last year, so in 2021, to give an example, we have a population of say 22 million, right? Give or take a few. Last year, there were over 20 million prescriptions written for statins for cholesterol.
I know a few men that had that as well.
Right? Of which only 1 million were required. Now, one of the things, and it's funny you mentioned there about some of the work that we do with men. About a year ago, I walked into a room full of mostly men, about 95% men. And it was very finance orientated room. There's a lot of, it was biotech and finance and that top end of C-level corporate Australia in the room. When I explained what I did to a couple of people around me, I could have been talking in Gaelic. I could have been talking in Welsh. And the one key thing that they kept saying was, oh, my doctor prescribed this medication that I'm on for my diabetes. My doctor prescribed this, as if it was a wonder pill.
Like, you've got to get on it too. Yeah, heard that.
But they could tell you what boat that they've just bought or what mortgage rate that they've just got on their next loan or whatever. Ask them about their health. And their value of health was so low in the grand scale of things that when I pushed and pressed and said, you know, if you value health, what number would you put on it? Oh, indefinitely. So what are you doing about it? Oh, I go and see my doctor once a year. That's not good enough.
That's not well-being.
That's not well-being. And one of the things that I find, a lot of people think, oh, I'll retire when I'm 60, and that sense of purpose that they have as well. Oh, and I'll have X amount in the bank. You'll have quality of life for 10 to 15 years. What are you going to do for those 60 years? So it's about healthy living, not healthy aging.
I love that. I want to ask you, there's a couple more questions I've got to go with you. I could ask a million questions of you, Mark, but I'm staying focused. What is real connection? When we're talking about men, what is real connection? What does it look like, and why is it important?
Great question. So real connection is actually being yourself and allowing to listen to the person talking to you, and not having to judge and not having to have this one-up shit, if that makes sense. When people talk, they talk from a value basis of their being, and real connection is allowing that person the time to speak and for you to absorb it, and for you to feel that you can say anything to that person. And one of the things in relationships, sometimes that person, you need other people to make that relationship stronger. And a lot of men somehow forget that aspect, that they need to have other mates outside a marriage or a partnership.
Yeah.
And that's critical for their well-being. Whether it's a sports club or they go rowing or running, they need that connection with other like-minded people as well.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. And again, though, it has been programmed into men that they're kind of their own islands, and they're strong and they can do it on their own, and it's very false. It's not based on anything real, and I'm pretty sure that was based on corporate world marketing so that they could get people to work much harder than what they were they actually needed to.
And the other big thing I think about for both genders, male and female, is the power of actually saying 3 little words. I don't know.
I'm going to say that was one of my favorite lessons and hardest, favorite to learn, hardest to put into practice. That's one of my favorites, and saying it to my kids. I don't know. What do you think?
Or I don't know, and just stop there. The power of silence is underrated. When you say you don't know, allow people to actually understand that you've said, I don't know. So people might, and again, a lot of men are programmed, when they say, I don't know, it's their mask, if you want to call it that, of saying, I need some help. So it's listening to the words that are really important.
Yeah, quite often when people are doing inner work, I find when we're talking about something that's happening within and they say, I don't know, really the direct energetic translation to that is, I don't want to know, actually. More to the point.
So it's putting those barriers of familiarity in front of, I'm prepared to go beyond and learn something.
Yeah. Why do you think it's so challenging? I mean, we have sort of touched on it, but why is it so challenging for men to connect?
Ego, pride, uncertain of who they are.
Yeah.
And again, I touched on it. Vulnerability is beautiful. And you will be vulnerable in an intimate relationship. Well, you should be. If you're not vulnerable with your intimate partner, then you're cheating yourself.
Oh, yeah.
So be vulnerable with your mates. There are certain times, and I'm only human. I'll pick up the phone and go, I need some help on this. Can you help me? I've got a mate. It's funny, actually, I've got a mate who I caught up with recently, and I said, I was struggling with something. He goes, just give me a call. Call me at any time. I'll be that person for you. So it was beautiful that he could feel that all I wanted was that space. And that's really important. And I do think it's also being able to know where you are. And the big thing that we will push with helping with men in particular is celebration of small wins.
Yeah.
That's a really important part of your being. Now, a small win, for example, I'll give an example of the small win I had this morning. I actually took the vacuum for a walk this morning. I feel great that my house looks great, right? Completely irrelevant to my work, but it's made me feel good.
Oh,
I
yeah.
spent 15 minutes vacuuming. Crappy job.
Oh, no, it's very satisfying though. I did the same thing because if I've got live in-person clients coming to my house, and I did it all and went, "Oh, I love it."
Yeah, I know. You sort of feel good and you sort of go, oh, therapeutic, if that makes sense, and enjoyable. So we're not built. So we're built, an ego is built on celebrating success, but giving yourself a pat on the back when things are going well is so important. And sitting in that moment is so important to know your own strength.
Mm.
And we don't do enough of that. And again, I don't think we actually, as human beings, male or female, actually sit with that emotion well enough to go, wow, that's important.
Well, I mean, we're in a world where we're trying to be fixed all the time. So to sit in a state of joy and enjoying your life is almost, particularly in Australia, it's almost like a tall poppy thing. We've got to cut that off because how can your life be so amazing? I've got one more question for you because I was going over your website and so I love this. What changes do you believe need to occur in society?
Great question. So there is not one fix on it.
Mm.
Where I do think there has got to be a massive, massive change is the balance between masculinity and femininity, which we both have. Now, I say that with the greatest and the utmost respect for things like the Me Too movement, which has done a fantastic job.
Oh, that's been started 20 years ago though, and it was started for very different reasons. So,
But I do think on the surface, it's done a great job, right? However, on the negative side, it actually has brought a lot of men being unaware of who they are. So men have to be able to be men, if that makes sense. Now, being a man, I jokingly say that being a Scotsman, we are the privileged nation in the world. Because as a Scotsman, we get shown from a very young age that we wear a skirt. And we call it a kilt. And we have pride wearing a skirt.
Yeah.
But we call it a kilt. So we embrace that from some gender point of view. But I think what is really important is acknowledging that women need to spend time with women, men need to spend time with men. And giving that space to people is so important. Then you're going to have a stronger balance.
Yeah.
And I think one of the key things is if you look at the way that the education system, and you and I are very much examples of that. We've been brought up, go to school, do this, do this, do that. Let me tell you, one of the most amazing things is go to school, and if going to university is not for you, go and be a plumber, go and be a tradesman, because I guarantee the neurosurgeon or the cardiologist who's got a broken drain needs a plumber. You are valued. So I think one of the key things, what needs to be fixed, is the value of that human being is so important. And the value is about balance. If you don't have balance, you're never going to experience the highs, which are unfamiliar, but you're also going to give too much energy to the lows. And you have to have that balance. And I keep referring it to as being a school child, that you're on that seesaw. And one of the beautiful things, if you think back as a 6-year-old, say, for example, one of the things that you will say to a stranger who's another 6-year-old, come play with me. Come engage. And lo and behold, there'll be other people that will join in. That 6-year-old person is having fun. And I think one of the key things that we need to do also is bring fun back to your life. We're too hardwired to trying to be the perfect parent, the perfect human being. Make mistakes every day, for God's sake. Embrace them, but also learn from them. And simple things, read books, talk to people, walk up to strangers and say hello to them. And just be yourself. Don't be identified by a job title or a structure. Be your own self is so important. And people don't, one of the pieces of work that we're doing is trying to identify that every single person has their own journey. And I would say one of the key things that one of the key lessons that people take away is the power of storytelling is so important.
Yeah.
And that's magnificent. So there's quite a lot of things that you can put out there, Emma. And I know that you're, a very spiritual individual, but one of the key things is making sure that every day you're happy with the day that you've had.
Yeah, someone said to me years ago, it was a beautiful older lady. Actually, it was an older Jewish lady who used to tell me about her childhood. And she just said, every day, make sure that you're in your day, that there's something about you in it. And it took me a long time to, she goes, make sure it's about you. And I didn't understand for a long, long time until one day it clicked and I thought, oh my God, just make it so that I feel good in what I'm doing and I'm enjoying myself and having fun. I'm not hurting anybody else. I'm looking after myself. Means I can spread that to other people, but just make sure you're in your own life, that it's about you.
Well, one of the key things, and I recently caught up with a friend of mine, and he's a cardiologist, and could talk words or language that I need a thesaurus to work out what he's actually said to me.
Yeah.
One of the things that we know, we all as human beings will tend to know that you've got 4 main valves in your heart, right? So every day, make sure that represent those hearts to your own being of love, of light, of connection, and of optimism. If you bring that to your own being, it can be you. It has to be your interpretation of it as well. But if you're doing that every day, no matter what happens, just have a good day.
You're the only person that can, like to enjoy your life. You're the only person that can do it for yourself. No one else can do it for you. I've got there's final 3 questions. They're the final 3 whats that I like to ask. You ready?
Yep.
What is well-being to you?
Well-being is about balance and about living your life and about healthy living.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what are your must-do daily well-being practices?
My daily well-being practices are listening to my body, listening to my gut, and also feeding myself and looking after myself is a priority.
I love that. What impact does it have on your life for having a well-being focus?
Oh, hugely, because it's not just inward focused. Energetically, you're bringing an energy. It's at times I almost feel that when I'm walking along the street or walking to my local coffee shop, I kind of have to look to see if my fly's undone or something like that, because people are staring at you because you emanate energy.
Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful. This has been amazing. And I want to already say I'd love to have you back on down the track, because there's so much more here that I've written little notes and I've got more questions. And yeah, there's so much more that I would like to delve into and get more specific around men's health as well, which I think
most certainly. I'd love to. And I've really enjoyed the opportunity to spend it with you this morning.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Thank you so much. Now, stay with me and just wait. It's probably about 16 seconds, and you'll see a little frame which will take up and take you into the links to connect with Martin. But what's the best way to get in contact with you?
So a couple of ways of getting in contact with me. Tacklingthesilence.com is the website which I myself and my business partner Natalie West run. And I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn as well. And you'll see some little funny videos that you'll see of them that I've recently been doing, which are just making you think.
They're amazing. I've been watching them. They're really cool. And I love that you're tackling corporate world, particularly large organizations, around well-being and how they're approaching it, because that is the new landscape of business. If a business isn't focused on well-being, then they're not going to have a business.
They don't have a core. They don't have a culture.
No. If you don't have a well-being culture going forward, or at least starting to build a foundation now, I can guarantee you in 5 years' time, the business won't be there.
100%.
Yeah. This has been amazing. You're absolutely sensational to spend time with, energetically fantastic. So please connect with Martin in and around men's health. It's absolutely amazing. And thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. Hope you've enjoyed it. We'd love to see the comments and likes, and please share and connect with us and let us know what you'd like me to see and talk about. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day. Bye.
Thanks, Emma.
To connect with Martin, head to tacklingthesilence.com. To connect with me, head to emmamuir.com. Enjoy your day and thanks for sharing your time.